It's the big show with Angel and Tim.
Angel and the bro.
Angel and the bro. All right, good morning. It is Tuesday, and that means you are waking up to Therapy Tuesday. Good morning, Dr. Geraldine Tan.
Good morning.
Dr. Jerry, the last time I saw you and I was covering on the show, you were in an airport.
Yes,
This was in
Incheon Airport.
Yeah.
You remember it.
Oh, in Korea.
In
Okay,
Korea.
all right.
And since then, you've been to Japan. You just got back.
Since then, I've been to KL and then Japan.
Wow.
Tell us, and you brought us some goodies. Thank you so much for all these yummy goodies. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's in these boxes?
So what you're holding up is a sakura mochi. Yeah, and then there is the fuyu sobi cake.
The what?
Which is a little
Fuyu
tiny
sobi cake.
Fuyu Sobi?
God knows what it
Who's
is.
Fuyu Sobi?
Okay, so for Therapy Tuesday, this is a different type of therapy. This is food therapy.
Oh, yum. No.
We should have started opening and eating.
Oh my gosh. Okay, no food for now. We are talking about something quite serious actually. This
Yes.
was an article in the Straits Times that I came across, and there is a Singapore study that says those who were hit as kids are more willing to physically punish their own children.
Yeah.
Dr. Geraldine Tan, I mean, you are a therapist, and I'm sure you've come across a lot of abuse and physical punishment, corporal punishment, what have you. Do you find this to be true? I mean, in your own sort of experience?
Okay, so we talk about nature, and before we go into that, so a lot of people are going to be confused because we put out on media yesterday that we're going to talk about choosing partners.
Oh,
So
you
we're
already did? Oh,
yes,
dear.
it's okay. We're going to park it for 2 weeks later when Glenn is back because that is his topic.
And he needs that.
So it's going to be a fun session then.
Okay.
Right.
But for these 2 weeks, we're not going to have that topic. So we did a last minute change to this more current topic.
Yes.
And I think very relevant for all the parents also.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay.
So is this something that you see in your practice? I mean, from experience?
Okay, so if we are looking at corporal punishment, right? So the current set of parents or the current generation of parents try not to use the cane. They try to use other methods because using the cane, their perception is very punitive. But we are talking about these children who are exposed to physical punishment. Yeah, and they have seen. So you will hear statements like, "Yeah, I've grown up with it. I'm okay. What?"
Yeah.
And you know they are.
I came out fine. My parents did the same. Yeah.
So they feel that it is somewhat necessary.
Yep.
Yeah. So for this, I suspect for these adults that are willing to use physical punishment, they don't abuse their children.
Right.
There's a
Right.
difference.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it is a punishment and not an abuse. So I think we need to distinguish the both.
I think I'd like to know, where do we draw the line?
I also like to know where do we draw the line, because there are different levels and different degrees of it, and I think the child's tolerance to it.
Yeah.
Were you guys caned as children?
Absolutely.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it wasn't just a cane. I was exposed to a huge, different range of things. Yes.
Wow. And then, do you cane Charlie, if we could ask?
I will tell you, I have had to take out the cane. I actually couldn't find a cane, right? The cane that I have at home is actually inherited.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's inherited, right? Which if you look at it, it's like, I can't believe it's still in one piece, right? But
They don't make things like they used to, right?
No. But it is, it's used more as he'll see it.
Right. Okay.
A visual threat.
Okay.
Yeah.
So have you used it on
I
him?
have.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
But
right.
of course, when I first got it, right, it looked like about to fall apart. I've actually had to piece it together with masking
Why
tape.
don't you just? I hate to encourage this.
Fine.
Buy a new
Cannot
one.
find.
Can you use something else like feather duster? I mean, don't they do that as well? Or is it different? Is it?
I cannot feather duster before. I wouldn't do that too.
Oh wow. Okay.
But yes, to answer your question, I have. On occasion, had to take out the cane, but very, very, very rare. Probably can count on like one hand the number of times I've had to use it.
And Dr. Jerry, did you cane your children, if we can ask?
So I don't use the cane.
Okay.
So I don't believe in the cane because
You use the leather whip
oh no!
from the bedroom.
I think that position, the function,
I know
not
it
very
is
good. You
It's
know?
happened before, right? Because I tend to take on Glenn's persona.
It's the seat. Yeah.
It's the aura. It's the spirit is still here. Okay.
No. Because I guess when I growing up, I think the cane has this idea of or connotes this idea of fear. So you really, really fear it. I don't know whether you've done it before, but I've done it many times. I hide the cane I'll
From
throw
your
it behind.
parents.
Yeah,
Right,
I'll
okay.
throw it,
Yeah.
or I'll it suddenly just disappears and they cannot find it.
I'm sure they have
anymore.
more sitting around. Very easy to find back in the day.
Yeah. So I guess one thing that I always advocate is not to use something that is external. But if you really
Your
do
own.
need to discipline, then you
Use your hand?
your hand because you know how much force.
Yeah, you can
as
moderate,
opposed
right? Yeah.
to a whip or a cane or something external, you have no control over the strength.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you hit, you feel the pain and the kid feels the pain.
Okay.
So you know
That's
how much.
fair enough, right?
I'll share something with you guys.
Sure.
I've never really said it. It's spoken about this in public, okay? But when I have had to use the cane, okay, you can always tell when I've had to use it because I will have marks on my arm, okay?
Yeah.
And people go, why you cane yourself? I said that's very important because for two reasons. Number one, as a parent, I should never forget how it feels. As someone who has been caned before, I don't ever want to forget how it feels to get caned, right? So I will test it on myself first. And by caning myself first, I will also be able to moderate the strength. I know exactly how hard, how pain before I actually have to deliver a stroke.
Do you do this in front of Charlie?
Yes.
Okay.
So he sees
All right.
it. And he also, I guess he knows like, okay, we're in it together. If he gets punished, Papa also gets punished as well.
Does it work?
It does. I feel it does, which is, I'm very thankful I've really never had to use it very
As much as
Yeah.
you thought you
Yeah,
may
yeah.
have. Yeah. So the study also found that children who were harshly disciplined, including being caned, kicked, or
Ooh.
slapped on the face. Kicked, I feel, is like abuse, right? That's
Yeah,
bordering abuse,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And subjected to threats, yelling, and other forms of psychological aggression. So this is more than just caning.
Yes.
Are more likely to be aggressive and have poorer mental well-being.
Yep.
That's part of the study.
Yeah, so we're not just talking about corporal punishment, we're talking about harsh parenting. So harsh parenting creates a space that is unsafe, that
Yeah.
is threatening, that the child cannot go back to. Where, so when you talk about you regulating yourself,
Yep.
you're ensuring that the space is still safe, that
Yeah.
the child can still come back to the space.
Right.
But this study, if we talk about harsh parenting, the child feels there's nowhere to run, there's nowhere
Yeah.
to hide.
Is there one that's worse? I mean, in your opinion? I mean, obviously there is physical punishment, but it's also emotional, psychological punishment, which can also lead to a lot of trauma. Is one worse than the other?
Okay, so the children who have grown up with the physical punishment as well as emotional punishment or emotional abuse will tell you the physical pain they can recover from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the emotional scars last forever and it goes from one generation to another generation because, you get triggered.
So it's kind of like that saying is not really accurate. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. It would be sticks and stones kind of like you can forget that.
Yeah.
But words will stay around forever, right?
I use this phrase more for children who are being bullied. So to teach
yes,
them to
okay.
ignore those words and let it just like roll over the back.
So it depends on the
water.
situation, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But because the parent is supposed to be secure base, is supposed to hold that position.
Sacred space.
Yeah, that the child can be nurtured and can grow
Yep.
safely and gently. We ruin that space.
Yeah.
Dr. Jerry, if I can just have you move your mic up a little bit, you're a little bit softer. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. That sounds better.
So would you advise, well, how would you advise like the reconciliation part of the punishment? After you've done the punishment, then to come back and explain and remind your child, hey, I've had to do this, but don't ever forget that I still love you.
So something very popular for the this at least the last decade is actually gentle parenting, positive parent. So it started with positive parenting. So positive parenting is trying to be consistent, trying to teach the children consequences and to affirm the child. And then in the last 10 years, we look at gentle parenting. So the difference between the both, one major difference is gentle parenting has no punishment at all. Yeah. So positive parenting, we still have natural consequences.
Which I think is a good thing. But I mean, to each his own, right? I mean, people bring up their children the way they want to bring them up.
But once again, I mean, regardless of whether, it's gentle parenting or it's the harsher parenting, after the punishment,
Yes.
what has to happen?
So I was talking about the positive parenting and the gentle parenting, right? So the gentle parenting explains to the child, tries to understand the emotion, try to go through the emotion, and be there for their emotions also.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's do that on air about the parenting styles that you've seen.
When it comes to punishment, regardless of whether it's, corporal punishment, physical punishment, whether it's just words, there's some sort of punishment involved. If there is some sort of punishment involved, there should also be some sort of reconciliation after that, right? Because, you do want to create a safe space. You want to encourage the child that even though I've had to punish you, you can still come back to me. We still have a relationship. Now, how important is that? And what are the best ways to do that?
Okay, so if you've already meted out the punishment, I don't think it's the reconciliation. I think it's the understanding of why the parent has this behavior. Because the child has a certain behavior, the parent also has a certain behavior, and the child is trying to comprehend what did I do wrong, and how come you're behaving in such a manner with such strong emotions. So when you talked about, you regulating yourself, so the parent afterwards need to regulate themselves and come forward. So we look at positive parenting, we look at gentle parenting. Of course, that is an entire process. That means gentle parenting does not involve punishment at all.
Right.
But let's say you've already meted out some sort of punishment and you want to come back. You can borrow some of these ideas from either positive parenting or gentle parenting, where you are engaging with the child. You're trying to understand their emotions, you're trying to understand their behavior. Where does this behavior come from? And not behavior equals punishment, full stop. So you create a situation, or rather we don't want to create a situation where this child feels anxious. The second he looks at you, he quakes in fear. Or to feel that he is constantly threatened in your presence. This person is
walking on eggshells all the time. So we
Mm.
have Sheikh Daniel Bothan on our YouTube that says, morning, his opinion is a cane can be used as a deterrence. You don't actually have to use it. I see that the children of today are different and the approach has to be different as well. Be kind but stern. So, I mean, is that a good way of parenting? I know there's no one stereotype, textbook way to parent, because all children, all parents are different, all relationships are different. But is having a threat in the background, like a cane kind of hanging there, telling your child, if you do, I will. Is that also a form of, kind of fear instilling to the child? I mean, is that healthy?
It's okay. Let's look at the different parenting styles. So you have the authoritarian, authoritative. You have the permissive and the laissez-faire. So these are constantly taught in different parenting workshops, right? So the authoritarian is you do it my way. So there's a lot of fear that is being instilled in the child to follow through with whatever the parent says.
Or else.
So the other extreme is the laissez-faire. You do whatever you want. I can't be bothered. So that's neglectful parenting because the child has no boundaries, and the child is growing up, developing, and they need boundaries, right? So both end, we're looking at it and go, one completely fearless and the other one fearful.
Yeah, a bit extreme, right?
Yeah, we don't want that. So we have the other two, which is permissive. But permissive parenting, I feel that the parents tend to be bullied because they give in,
they manipulate.
Yeah. So what we want to strive for is authoritative parenting.
Okay.
That means there are boundaries. We set those boundaries. We are consistent with those boundaries. And how do we ensure that there is consistency? There needs to be some consequence, I feel.
So you cross it, you pay for it.
Correct.
That kind of thing.
Correct. So, but that is my opinion, right? You know, every parent, every child, every dynamic will be different.
Yeah.
Okay. I like what you talked about consistency, okay? Because I have heard that a lot from different parents, you know, and then they remind you, if you punish your child for something, all right, every time they do it, you have to punish them. Because if you don't punish them the next time, and then you punish them one time, they'll never really know, you know, that they'll always wondering, actually, no, it's not a big deal. I didn't
and
punish
they
the last
remember.
time. Yes, right? But I've also heard before, and I suppose this is from the old school parents, they say a good punishment is one you only have to mete out once, ever. You know, almost like, you know, it was so harsh that the child remembers and they never forgot and they never did the same thing ever again.
The scars still remain. Oh my gosh, that's terrible though.
No, I don't think
That's
want...
not a good way.
Okay. Because of how the brain works,
Yeah.
right? You need repetition to learn something. Even your ABCs, we've sung the ABC song so many times to kids, and they have sung it so many times that they remember and becomes, you know, second nature to them. So if you want to teach something, don't you need to repeat it also to create that impression in their head and not try to pair it with a negative emotion?
Yeah.
You can. It appears faster.
It doesn't happen just once.
No.
Well, I suppose it also comes down to what the crime was, right? I mean, if it's something really, really serious, it's not something that they can do and then be reminded multiple times. Like go out, play in the street, you know, in front of cars, right? You don't want to have to just keep reminding and then they keep doing it.
And then one day something happens kind
exactly,
of thing. Right,
because you may not have that many chances to remind them about it if they're going to keep playing in the streets.
Put them on a leash.
I suppose that might lead to other sorts of
it's
trauma,
no good.
right?
Oh my God, I've seen kids on leashes. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, or something that maybe more serious, involving actual, you know, crimes,
Accidents
right?
or
crimes
crimes,
like stealing, like punching, beating somebody else, or something like that. Whatever punishment you mete out, you want it to be harsh enough. And once again, I'm not saying it has to be physical punishment, right? But you want it to be harsh enough that they don't do it a second time.
You want them to learn their lesson.
Yes, right from the get go.
Yeah. Dr. Jerry?
True. So some of them, you know, you rightly put, like if they put their finger in the socket.
Oh my God.
I learned that the hard way too, growing up. And I learned it one time. I never had to do it again after that.
Yeah. So, but we're not... Okay, so when the parent corrects that particular behavior, we're not abusing the child.
Yeah.
But the child can feel our immense fear. So there was a negative emotion and
Attached
a very intense emotion. It's like, stop! And then the child gets a little bit of a shock, like what happened, right? So the child actually remembers that
shock
emotion rather than you screaming at the child,
Yeah.
you know, but they would learn just because the whole system went into a little bit of a shock when you did the intense emotion download onto the child.
Do you feel that kids, I mean, even things like that, they become calloused after a while? Because if your parents are always shouting at you, right? Then the next time they shout at you, right, it's not going to have that same impact.
Okay, but if you're preventing the child from being in danger versus you're consistently shouting, then that's very different, right?
Yeah.
If that is your mode of
Communication,
operation, communication, and how you operate on a daily basis, they're going to block you out.
Yeah.
Prash has come on our Facebook and says, I was caned crazy, but I understood that my parents meant well. Personally, I don't believe in hurting anyone physically in a familial or social setting. However, I'm all for state-sanctioned judicial caning. I think that's a whole different story that we're talking about. But I remember when I was growing up, I was never caned. My mom was the disciplinarian, and we were very fearful of her. You know, we were fearful of her stare, you know, and I don't know how she did it. I mean, we grew up fine without the cane. And I always remembered that when she scolded us, no matter how much she shouted at us, no matter how little she got angry with us, at the end of that, maybe about an hour later or something, she would come down and she would sit down with us and she would talk to us for like an hour, and that's when we would cry and she would cry. And I always appreciated that reconciliation at the end of it, you know, like why we did it. Half the time we were still like, I still don't understand what you mean by you're scolding me because you love me. Because kids don't get that, right? They're like, if you love me, then why are you scolding me? They don't get it at all. So I think it's important to make the child understand that it's for their own good. But I mean, we've become our parents now, right?
That's the funny thing, right? I mean, once in a while, I always joke about this, right? As much as, you know, you grow up a certain way and you're like, oh, next time when I become a parent, I will not be like this. But there are days, I will tell you this, I open my mouth and my dad comes out.
And that's a good thing. That is a good thing.
All right. Okay, so I mean, you know, back to this whole finding ways. They're saying that the studies have shown that, you know, parents or other people who were, you know, hit as children, you know, become more likely, right? How to break the cycle?
So it takes a lot of effort, because if you say, I don't want to be like that, do you know what is it and how is it to be something else? You've never been exposed to it. You've never learned it. You've never experienced it. It's very hard to try and see, can I do it differently? So we earlier I mentioned about gentle parenting, positive parenting. It takes effort to read about it. There is PPP, the Positive Parenting Program, that is an Australian program that you can sign up for and, you know, attend. Gentle parenting, there are also workshops, and also I think there are discussions, forums. Some of my colleagues are really, really good with that, and they talk about it. So it takes a lot of effort to relearn, to unlearn what you've already learned, and to relearn a new style,
a new way of doing things. I remember watching this, and I think people could watch it. I mean, if you're interested in it, it ends with us. It's with Blake Lively and that Justin guy, the guy that they're in that lawsuit about. But it's basically about abuse and breaking the cycle. It's about a mother and daughter saying that this abuse ends with us. I don't mean to spoil it for anyone, but because the movie's already been out for a while, and if you haven't already, if you don't already know what it's about, then you know. But it's a really good one if you are in that situation, or if you're trying to see it from someone else's perspective. How she actually the perspective of how the story changed in her head, how she was making excuses for the kind of abuse that she was getting. Like it was a fall. And then it was later revealed that it wasn't a fall. Because she was told it was a fall, like are you okay? And, you know, in her head, she kind of thought that was. But in reality, it was the man abusing her. You know, and I think a lot of people go through that, making up the stories and thinking it's the truth.
So, I mean, for people, a lot of people, I mean, you know, you just look at the comment section, right? There is a big group of parents that are doing exactly what we talked about earlier, and that is, oh, know what? It's okay. I got hit as a child. It's okay. My child will survive. In fact, I don't even hit them close to as many times as I got hit when I was a child. So it's okay what it is that I'm doing. And we hear about all these stories about, no, actually, corporal punishment, you know, can lead to some, you know, a lot of trauma, right? And people are like, really? What kind of trauma? Because they don't go it. In your experience as a therapist, what are some extreme, real, you know, examples of trauma that carry on for the rest of their lives and how they manifest in behaviors?
And I'm glad that we are talking about this, right? Because when an article comes out, everybody assumes that corporal punishment equals bad. But maybe it's not all bad, you know. So we're talking about abuse.
Yep.
So extreme behavior from the parent. So most of us don't engage with that.
Yep.
You know, and a light tap does not equal abuse.
Yeah.
But because articles are out there, even the kids will come and say, "You don't hit me, you hit me, I'll go and tell the police."
Yeah.
You go like, excuse me, you know. So they use that against the parents, and they think that they are immune, or they have that immunity from all sorts of corrections,
Right.
which is wrong. As a parent, we still need to put in boundaries because the child does not know boundaries. So if we talk about the extremes again, right? We don't want to be a helicopter parent, which is an over-involved parent, you know, and policing the child with everything. But you also don't want to be an uninvolved parent. Okay, you whatever you want to do, you go and do it. I can't be bothered. So we also don't want to do that. So we need to find that balance, right? Like, how much do we come in and how much do we stand firm and say, you know, stop it.
Yep.
Yeah, and really use that firm tone.
Right.
But we are not degrading. We are not putting down the child. We're not shaming the child. We're not trying to break this child such that this child has no self-worth.
Yep.
So I don't think we're talking about that sort of parents. So
Okay.
most of these parents, especially the those that are listening in and those that are watching, we are all very eager to have a healthy, physically healthy child, emotionally healthy child.
And a great relationship,
And a
with
great
open
relationship,
communication.
yes.
But have you seen a lot of people, you know, just really suffer because of the effects of how they were parented when they were children, and how as adults now they struggle with certain things. Once again, the trauma and the after effects.
Yeah, so those are more extreme cases, right? So these are people that have been put down. They have been shamed. They have been, so not only fat shamed, they have been just told that they are just
not
rubbish.
good enough. Oh, yeah.
Not just not good enough, they're just rubbish. You know, that they shouldn't be born, or they shouldn't be. Yeah. So these stay with them because they feel completely useless. They don't know their place in the world.
Yeah.
You know, and they question, why do you bring me into this world?
Yeah.
If, I'm just so
It becomes a self-fulfilling
rubbish,
prophecy, right? And then after that, when they get into other relationships, whether it's romantic relationships, parental relationships, they start, behaving that same way because they think it's been inculcated in them. That's what they are. So then they just are like that.
So they keep trying to fulfill somebody else's expectation because the parent has certain expectations, and they try to push themselves to be up to par, but who knows what is up to par.
You know, you talk about gentle parenting and positive parenting, and earlier you were saying, like, the kid can manipulate the fact that you can't hit the child because the child will call the police on you or call the authorities on you. So where is the line drawn? Because you want a gentle parent, you want a positive parent, right? But the kid is obviously learning things from external sources, like, because you've gentle parented me and you've positive parented me, you are not allowed to touch me. But sometimes parents can get so angry because children can really test
push your buttons,
push your buttons and test the patience. So where do you draw the line and say to the child, like, if the child comes up to you, you don't hit me, otherwise I'm gonna go say you're abusing me. How do you control something like that and rein it in?
Okay, so the concept of positive parenting is not that you don't bother about the behavior at all. You do pay attention to the behavior. So if a toddler is throwing things on the floor and you've told the toddler, no, don't throw it, that I don't.
These are the boundaries that you're talking about, right?
Boundaries.
Yeah.
The next time you throw it, the
cane comes out.
No. The toy will disappear. So that's a consequence, right? So the child throws it one more time. You stay with the behavior and go like, this behavior is bad.
Yep.
Now I've told you that the toy will disappear. The toy will disappear. So you no
gotta
longer
stick to that.
Yeah. So the behavior is, and the situation is still dealt with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a gentle parenting could sound like you're very curious. You're wondering what sound the toy would make when it falls on the ground.
Oh my God, I don't think I could ever gentle parent. Seriously.
We can play it differently, you know. So we focus a lot on the emotions.
But don't
we
children
still
get
feel it.
spoiled like that? You know,
No,
like,
no.
oh, you know, don't worry. This is
Yeah.
what it sounds like when it falls. You know?
But we stay, the whole idea is that we stay with the behavior. We're not ignoring the behavior. We're not ignoring the situation. So it's very different. So we can choose how we want to focus on the situation.
Could you
itself.
gentle parent?
No.
No, what I'm-
Speaking about it so convincingly.
what I'm getting from you is that focus on, I suppose, the crime, the behavior, rather than the person to go, you are a naughty boy. You
Yes.
are such an awful child.
Yes.
You can say that was not a good thing to do.
Yes.
Right,
As a
yeah.
gentle
Correct.
parent.
I suppose. I mean,
But
that's what I'm.
if they break your family heirloom, oh, is that what it sounds like when it touches the ground?
At that point, I know what I'm going to do. At that point, if I know I'm about to lose my,
Yeah.
I will just go. You go talk to your mother, and I'll let Sabrina deal with
But
it.
that's another thing, right? Parents should always. I mean, we've learned this from Kelly, who does parenting.
Yes, she talked about Asian parenting last week,
parenting,
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And she says how parents should always be on the same page.
Yes.
It's not like, oh, you go ask your father if
No.
you can go out.
I do that because I don't trust myself.
You don't wanna deal with it as
to
well,
not
yeah.
be, because I might go crazy, right?
Yeah.
And because I don't trust myself to act in the responsible, effective parenting way.
Yeah.
I would rather.
You will lose your crap.
I would rather leave it to Sabrina to deal with him.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Because I feel she would be able to, police him or correct him in a more objective
And
way.
a calmer way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and we always play good cop
Tag
and
team.
bad cop.
Is that a good
Yeah.
thing though? The good cop, bad
Yeah,
cop, or
so-
should both be equal cops? You know.
So you stand united on your opinion
Right.
on certain behaviors or certain situations, but one can be firmer
And one is gentler.
and one is gentler, because like you say, sometimes we get overwhelmed by our emotions also, and you're human. So when you ask me, can I do gentle parenting? No, because of my personality, right?
Yeah.
But another colleague of mine does it beautifully, and I look at her and I go like, how do you manage to do that?
And is the child well behaved?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the most
Okay.
important question,
Yeah.
Because I do believe, I mean, and a lot of people will probably, question this, but I do believe some children are more angels than others. Right? I've seen some
Yes.
of my friends' kids, and I'm like, wow, you are really, really lucky just based on the way your child is.
Yeah.
They're so much more susceptible to you explaining.
But it
and
is
things
true,
like
though.
that.
It is true. I mean, there are kids that are devils, and then there are the
Harder to manage than others.
There are, though. I've seen.
Oh no!
And it's tough for parents as well because, I mean, there are some parents, I mean, they were raised in a certain way.
Yep.
They recognize, okay, how I used to parent, I suppose, not what I should be doing. So they try, they look for alternatives, but sometimes they expect immediate results. And when they don't get the immediate results, then they revert back to the old ways, which they see as more efficient or more effective.
Well, like
in
Dr.
correcting
Jerry
behavior.
says,
Yeah.
everything needs to be
Exactly.
repeated, right?
So I guess parents also just need to be reminded. I mean, when you're trying something new, it may not work the first time. As you repeat it and you get more polished in how you and how you adopt this new parenting style, then perhaps it's a long game.
Okay, so Gerald says, we have about a minute left. Watching my 2-year-old, my wife and I recently tried positive parenting, and we noticed that his emotions are much more regulated and controlled. So instead of scolding him for bad behavior, we egg him towards positive behavior and role model positive behavior and actions instead, and he tries to copy us. So they try to do it themselves, and they've seen a positive response, which is great. Matthew says gentle parenting requires lots of patience and time. It may not always be realistically feasible in Singapore's pace.
Singapore's pace. What do you think of that?
So I pick up on a word that you said earlier.
Which was?
Efficiency.
Efficiency, yeah.
Is it efficient? Is a certain parenting style more efficient than
Another?
I think is how proficient we are in which style we use.
Right.
Because if you ask me to do gentle parenting, I'm not proficient in that. Of course, I'll take longer.
And
right?
you lose patience.
I'll get frustrated with
Exactly.
myself.
Yeah.
You know, but so someone else that is very proficient in, let's say, the positive parenting style, they will meet it out and they will do it with, a lot of flair. And it will be efficient for them.
I guess a big part of it is also knowing your child, right? I mean, especially when you need to find what motivates your child as well. So, I mean, as of late, I'll give you an example, right? Charlie he was recently made class captain.
Nice, congratulations, Charlie.
And he takes that responsibility and that status very, very importantly, right? And so sometimes when I see him misbehaving, nowadays I just go, is that how a class captain behaves? Should I tell your teacher that this is how her class captain is behaving? And immediately he'll be like,
he thinks.
Yes. Because he recognizes that, yes, he's in a particular position and he needs to be an example to other kids.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing. That's a great thing.
Yeah. So knowing your child is important, but many times, and that may be something that parents need to reflect on, where they are very encapsulated in their own world.
Own lives, yeah.
With their own expectation. I expect my life to be such and such. So I expect my child to be behaving in a certain way. So their own expectation that they have grown up with, that they expect of themselves and of the child also. So they don't connect with the child at all.
Yeah. So for instance, if the parent, right, is thinking like, I was spanked as a child and it worked on me, so they automatically assume it's going to work on their child as well.
Yeah. Matthew was saying, he's not saying it's an excuse, but we have to be realistic that many parents don't have the time because you need to take time to explore the behavior. I think that's true. And I think also with the lack of time, parents get very impatient.
Yes.
Not the children. You know, they're just like, because they don't spend so much time with their kids, all of a sudden they come home, something's been done, they're like, okay, I've had it with you. You know, and they don't have that enough time to cultivate and bandwidth because they're tired and and they just want to plop on the sofa and watch TV and want some peace and quiet. So I get what he's saying. We always wish we had more time, but we don't. So Dr. Geraldine, any closing statements?
I suppose if we look at the tips from gentle parenting, the 3 C's: connection, communication, and consistency.
Notice Cain was not one of those C's.
Oh my gosh,
So must be reminded, not Cain.
Okay. But something that Brené Brown said really resonated. She says, parenting is about raising and celebrating the child you have, not the child you thought you'd have.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Geraldine.
No
All right,
worries.
we will see Dr. Jerry again next week. Right now, this is the Kid Leroy with 1,000 Miles.